What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to be talking about the Bitcoin price chart, along with the altcoin market, as we get ready to kick off a new week with the United States stock market, and once again, the infamous battle to see if the Russell 2000 is capable of breaking out into a new all-time high, taking the rest of the cryptocurrency market with it. But as we have this continuous battle with the Russell 2000 trying to get out, the waffling around up here with the altcoin market, Bitcoin, holding on top of these levels or holding above that 105. These are the things we've watched for nearly the last year in here. And the big debate, of course, we've been having for the last several months has just been, have we already produced a parabolic peak over here for Bitcoin? Is Bitcoin going to perform an ABC correction up in here, similarly to the top of 2017 and 2018? Or is Bitcoin already a little further along and just waiting for the evidence to become obvious that a bigger plunge comes into play here? I don't know about you, but when I watch YouTube videos and technical analysis YouTube videos, I'm pretty critical of them. I'm pretty keen on catching when people say up, down, sideways. And then, of course, whenever something plays out, being able to reference back to that and say, see, I told you up, down, sideways. I'm aware of that when I'm making YouTube videos to try to avoid that the best I can. Or if I have to present it, I'll present it in the form of saying, I'm really unsure here. Here's the way things could happen, or the way I've seen things happen before, but I don't have any strong evidence to suggest one's going to play out over the other. But the thing that we're talking about, obviously, on this time frame in here, on this type of price action, really dates back to what we've been talking about all year long on a much bigger range for Bitcoin, on how price action will play out right in here. I do not know how many YouTube video titles have had this little range here placed on the title. If I just look at this little range right here, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 out of these 16 videos. So the overall theme and discussion, of course, over the last several months has just been us getting here, right? Working our way back up, doing the ABC, pushing to the new high. And then the big debate on whether or not that was our parabolic push or not, similarly to in here, or if this whole thing has just been some massive ABC backtest to happen right in here. And that's been the big debate, the going back and forth on it, and how if we, drop below $105,000, that implies that A, we're probably beyond that moment, but just the obvious area of being watched in here is all of this, right? So for the last several months, years, it's been about watching this Russell 2000 to see if it's going to bust out of here to take the altcoin market with it, right? We've shown all these confluences of these things and how they operate. The altcoin market's tied to the Russell 2000, Bitcoin up here with the S&P, NASDAQ, and Dow Jones. But now we're entering into a phase of deciding, is this really the top? Is it not? Can we go ahead and place any level of confidence to say that's it and there will not be a new one? Or do we still leave the door open to say this is just still the back test and there's still one more push up to happen here? Well, if you noticed yesterday, I actually posted the new newsletter, and I posted about this on X that in a few hours I'll be releasing the end of month newsletter 2 days early. I worked through the weekend to get this together, and it's a long one packed with important observations, so do not wait. I grinded through the entire weekend. Here I am at the wee hours of the morning getting a YouTube video ready to have it out super early in the morning. But what I opted to do was take a look at the market from all sides. I still stand by it and believe in it because it's unequivocally proven that if the Russell breaks out, the altcoin market tends to go with it. And we even saw that just 2 weeks ago when the Russell 2000 set its brand new all-time high. Then it had its all-time high daily candle close, and then total two, the altcoin market had its all-time high daily close at the same time, taking nearly 4 years for both of them and doing it on the exact same day. So of course, my thoughts are if this Russell can escape out of here, we open up the doors of possibility for the crypto market tremendously because it signals breadth is opening in the market. But as we struggle here and the altcoin market falters off of these highs, and as Bitcoin does sit way up in here, I opted to take a look at things from the bear case, the bear angle. I've posted a lot of things over there on X over the last week, and the reactions on X have been very typical of what you see like at the top of 2021 or when we were in that massive retrace that happened happened back in 2024, where the crowd is like absolutely furious and angry, pitchforks, go get them. And then I also noticed a lot of influencers having to really calm their audiences, right? I noticed that nobody's really kind of like willing to look at it from like the actual bear angle, because the crowd, the audience will eat the influencers alive. So they're having to really kind of spin it very positively and all those types of things. And I said, you know what, we're going to go head first. We're going to take a look at it from what would the bear case be here for the cryptocurrency market. We got to be clear. There's a bull case and there's a conditional here of the Russell 2000. So when we present all this stuff, or talk about Bitcoin today, which we're going to talk about a lot of different things this week. But when we talk about Bitcoin today, or the cryptocurrency market, there's this conditional element in here. And I posted about this yesterday, also saying that there's a series of indicators emerging in the crypto market that are nearly identical to what happened at 2021's top. Unless if the Russell 2000 and Total 2, the altcoin market, break out, I'll be highlighting these all week. Unless if this breaks out of here and busts out, taking this guy with it, then we're going to spend some time this week talking about the bear case for the market. Not to be fooled that there isn't a bull case. There is a bull case, but there's also conditionals in here of the market cooperating. But I wanted to present some of these bear cases to you on the channel, even though it gets very poor engagement. It's not clickbaity. It doesn't get a ton of views, but I think it's important to do it at this time because of where we are at and because of some of the things I'm seeing emerge over here in the underlying indicators. So when this data is presented here, this is going to be simply data. So people tend to get really angry and they want to say, ha, he's a bear. We must burn him. We must destroy him because he's out to hurt us. He wants us to lose. And that's not the case. I'm going to present the data and show you the data, and you can decide if the data is good or bad or doesn't matter. But the context of Bitcoin, of course, is looking at it from this lens. This is something we've looked at for a long time, saying, hey, we're going to kind of be looking for a top to form for Bitcoin up here. What that's going to look like has been challenging, but we're going to look for one to show up in here. The narrative is never that, right? The narrative is always, no, those things don't matter because that's what happens, right? But that hasn't been the argument here on the channel. And frankly, when we go through a lot of these difficult times, like back in here, go through the tariff stuff, we go through the crash back in February, I put these things together and I do them not to be like, hey, here's hopium for price going up. And then now that we've gotten here to price going up, let me just, for no reason, create some other hopium. I'm going to say, well, okay, this is the thing that we've watched for quite some time. It's now played out. Now, here's kind of what typically happens next after that. But the question is, do the underlying indicators suggest that that's true, that that is what would end up coming next? And that's where we can zoom out and look at Bitcoin on much larger time frames. What was it like when we were at the peak of 2021? What is it like right now? Are we flashing any of those same warnings? And yesterday I posted my first chart to highlight this, that we do see some of these exact same technical behaviors happening on Bitcoin that we saw back in 2021. Primarily all of the bearish divergences that have emerged over here on the weekly time frame. So I'll give you kind of an idea of what's going on this chart. Right here is our relative strength index, or our RSI. Down here is our moving average convergence divergence oscillator, or MACD, and down here is our stochastic RSI. What you'll see on this chart is that I've placed the dotted lines on various places here on the chart, but what these actually are the exact moments where the weekly MACD has the actual confirmed cross happening in here. So these aren't just random dots that are placed on the actual price chart, but they're denoting when the MACD actually crosses itself. So we can get an idea of what happened with price action after those crosses took place. So first, I'm going to take the stochastic off the screen for just a second to focus on these two alone. Notice as price climbs here during the 2020 and 2021 bull run, the relative strength index is continuing to climb with it, right? Then we go into the actual bull run in here, have another little push happening in here, and then we kind of start losing some of the strength. We start seeing a bearish divergence emerge over here on the relative strength. It's just not quite as strong as it was during the initial breakout phase. As that bearish divergence starts to set itself in play, we can see there's that one, then it's just getting weaker and weaker and even weaker here as we go into that. And then whoop, then it finally lets go of itself, right? A series of bearish divergences emerge on the chart and then it lets go. But then we go on and we actually set another new high in November, right? But as we can tell, the relative strength index is not able to get anywhere close to the strength that we had on the past push. And then it rolls over. And that's the peak of the actual bull market. The things that happened here on the moving average convergence divergence is we can see the moment that we actually ended up crossing here. And you can see this is right as we start going into our retrace, and then the market does let go. So just because this cross happened here on the moving average convergence divergence didn't mean it was over for the altcoin market necessarily. But it did imply the momentum was totally lost over here on Bitcoin, right? Then when we go set our new high, and then when we cross over here on the moving average convergence divergence once again, what happens? We liquidate and we set the bear in actual motion. But what's interesting about these is not only do we have the bearish divergence emerging over here on the relative strength index, we can see the bearish divergence emerging over here on the moving average convergence divergence, or the MACD. A new high gets set with reduced strength. And so now we've been looking at all of this through these lenses and saying, could that be it? Could that be it? And we take a look over here at the indicators of what's happening on the weekly time frame to see, one, yes, there is a bearish divergence that has happened here on the relative strength index between these two peaks. And for the first time, there's a bearish divergence that has happened over here on the moving average convergence divergence. Notice there isn't necessarily one that happens between these two peaks. From here to here, we do still rise. However, that's not the case for this one. We have gone down. We have lost strength, similarly to how we lost strength back in 2021. In addition, we've already seen the cross happen. To imagine that being similar from an indicator perspective to 2021, that's like being somewhere around here. Now, I don't think price action is going to play out like 2021's price action, but to give you an idea of just in the cycle perspective of where we were when the indicators did this for Bitcoin, that's where we were. By the time we got this second cross to happen on a bearish divergence, that's where we were in the market for Bitcoin at that time. As we can see down here as well, our stochastic RSI has already lost its strength as well and already fallen down to near zero. A lot of times these can fall down to near zero before the price action actually ends up playing out. But it's not just here on the weekly time frame that we can see all of this happening for Bitcoin. We can also see this when we zoom out to the 2-week time frame. So rather than each candle representing 1 week, it now represents 2 weeks. And we can get an idea of the bearish divergence that happened between April and November of 2021 and the bearish divergences we've seen over here in the market on the 2-week time frame. But we can also see that on the MACD, that here we have a bearish divergence on the MACD between our April high and our November high, and that right now we have the same thing, and we do already have these crossing down below each other. Now, barring some type of like $20,000 candle showing up here over the next 13 days, I suppose you could get this blue line to try to come back up, but it's still going to be locked in with a cross right there, which by the time we're doing that type of stuff, we tend to have already been done, at least for Bitcoin back in 2021. So what I'm trying to present to you here is non-opinionated data. So if you find anger in seeing this data, which most people don't, but there are some people who say, he's a bear. This is data. The art of social media is to spin the data and say none of that matters, right? It's always bull all the time, extreme hopium on social media. Anytime you present this type of stuff, it is not rewarded. It is obviously, you are to be burned at the stake for presenting this type of data. I don't understand why social media is like that, but it is. I do understand. I do. I get it. People don't want to lose money, and this incites a little bit of fear, and that's the reaction that you end up getting. So I understand that. I don't know why I said that. But what we can clearly see on these larger time frames is this weakness is also emerging in here, and obviously we have the bearish divergences there too. We also see stochastic RSI had attempted to get out. It attempted to get out. It's on its way back down again. And we're now left with a series of information to say, hey, there's bearish divergences on the 2-week and on the 1-week time frame here for Bitcoin on a structure that we've talked about for quite some time. While we all sit here and debate on whether or not this produces another new high, this produces just a retrace, this produces a rollover, whatnot, but that Bitcoin is flashing a lot of similar behavior to what happened back in 2021. We'll come onto the channel, we'll say, hey, we'll see bullish divergences emerging. We'll see MACD crosses happening to the upside. It's time to be optimistic. And it's typically when the crowd is very pessimistic, right? But this is one of those environments where we have actual bearish divergences and MACD crosses to the downside after a full-blown structure has already played out. So over the weekend, I released a 52-minute long recording to go along with this, I think, about 90-page long write-up where I present a lot of the bear case, a lot of the bull case, and how there's the condition there for this Russell to cooperate. And while we see this happening in here, it's not necessarily like every element is exactly the same, right? So I do want to make sure that I'm presenting it in a fair way to not say, hey, everything in this market is exactly the same as it was back in 2021. I can say these elements definitely are. So these open up major concerns in the market to say, yo, we are actually producing a lot of bearish divergences and MACD crosses. These are concerning. These are marked the top. We can't ignore these. But I also can't present it and say everything is exactly the same because it's not. Things that we're used to are seeing the Bitcoin dominance fall before we end up having that, right? Even if 2021 was the weakest, most pathetic alt season you've ever seen in your life, we still saw the Bitcoin dominance collapse on itself during that moment. We have not had a Bitcoin dominance collapse happen. And the monthly indicators for the Bitcoin dominance are beginning to get bearish for the first time in years. So I do want to point to the fact that Bitcoin's price chart in general is flashing a lot of similar behaviors of what the top of Bitcoin looked like back in 2021. Even if we zoom in on this range and this discussion of these two structures and simply focus on these two areas right here and increase the time frame to look at the indicators on these, we can see the same thing just on these ranges right here, that there is an increase and an increase with a bearish divergence and a bearish divergence, with both of them crossing already. So even the indicators of this range that we've been studying, which we're normally looking at on a really short time frame, so I can show you guys all the candles that are happening in here, but even those indicators mimic what we've seen over here already. That's not opinionated, that's just data oriented. But there are head scratchers about the entire market in regards to this element has never made an appearance, and this is more favorable for this thing to actually move down. So it means there's an interesting dynamic at play in the market, or it's going to behave a little more nuanced. And so with how long this video has already gotten, we'll have to make an entire video dedicated to just the altcoin market and what it's doing too, and that nuance that does exist there. You don't quite have those crosses happening here just yet over on the altcoin market, and there's been times where it's gotten really close but didn't actually end up crossing. It doesn't mean it won't though. There's an unequivocal relationship between these two, the Russell 2000 and the altcoins. So we'll touch on that in the next video. But as for Bitcoin, it's flashing a lot of the same technical behaviors of what it looked like at the peak of 2021. That's not an opinion, that's just data. So until this Russell can break out and prove that we're going into a bust out, along with the altcoin market proving that it can bust out of here, my plan will be to discuss these things. That I'll be highlighting these all week, unless if a surprising Russell 2000 in total 2 can bust out. But all the things that we've looked at for Bitcoin over the last several months and the way we survived going through the tariff crash was to imagine working our way up, ABC and out, ABC and out. And now we're looking, do we flash a lot of the signs of what you would look like if this were true? And the answer is yes. So we'll touch on this stuff all week. Obviously, last week I took 1/3 off my portfolio. As you can see, there are things emerging in the market that are presenting a lot of similarities to what we've seen in 2021. To each their own. Everybody's welcome to do whatever they want to do. I'm never going to tell you when to buy. I'm never going to tell you when to sell. But I think it puts into a little bit of perspective here, seeing these bearish divergences form, that if I didn't take any action, I would simply be ignoring everything that we have seen before. I didn't go full Rambo mode, but took more of a defensive play as we're at where we're at. And if that Russell 2000 is able to bust out of here, then a lot of conditions start to change. But until then, we've got to kind of look at it through this light and at least present it here on the channel. And of course, I just grinded for like 4 days straight, putting it all together here in a newsletter. So it's all in like a presentation here in the newsletter. If you want to check that out at blockchainbacker.substack.com. Super long one at 52 minutes long. But my intention is not to come on here onto the channel and just go full blown full-blown bear and just become the guy who's absolutely calling the top. There's a lot of stuff in here that would make you want to actually call the top because there are a lot of things that are flashing that, but there are some of those differences in there, like we talked about with the Bitcoin dominance and like we're talking about with the Russell 2000. So there's a couple of those elements that still sit there that are just like, those aren't quite right of what a full-blown bear looks like. But there's a lot of stuff in here that is very similar to what we've seen before. So we're going to present it. We're going to talk about it. I do understand it incites emotions within people. And to understand that I'm not doing this for engagement. This doesn't actually provide any type of positive engagement. I don't enjoy people yelling at me. I don't enjoy influencers talking about me. It's not something that I'm doing in any way for any type of positive publicity. These are always rough times, but I always told you that I would put myself into that. I'd put myself into those rough times to get the data out there. And that's what I'm going to end up doing. I'm going to put the data out there. Everybody's free to do whatever they want with it in regards to deciding whether or not it's got merit to it or not. But that'll be the plan this week. I'm going to present these cases in here, and then we'll just see how that Russell goes. But all right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, guys. I hope that you had a wonderful weekend. We'll be here all week. Check out the newsletter at blockchainbacker.substack.com. It's published 2 days early. There's a link within the description of this video to the newsletter at blockchainbacker.substack.com. Otherwise, have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll check in with you guys soon. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor, but if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.